Nietzsche perceives Socrates as a symptom of decay, a thinker whose very existence marks the decline of a once vital civilization. For Nietzsche, the Greek world before Socrates was one of strength, beauty, and instinct, a culture that embraced life in its fullness, without the oppressive weight of rationalization. The Homeric heroes did not question the essence of their being. They acted, they conquered, they embodied the raw power of existence. In contrast, Socrates introduces a new type of man, the rationalist, the dialectician, the doubter. This shift, according to Nietzsche, is not a mark of progress but of sickness. It signifies the moment when a civilization turns against itself, when it begins to question the very forces that gave it life. Socrates embodies what Nietzsche calls the triumph of the weak over the strong, not in terms of physical might, but in the battle of values. He represents the moment when instinct is replaced by reason, when natural order is replaced by argumentation. Instead of acting from a place of power and will, Socrates reduces existence to a series of logical deductions. To Nietzsche, this is not wisdom, but a profound misunderstanding of life itself. The world, in its raw and untamed state, is not a puzzle to be solved through dialectics. It is an arena of struggle, of creation, of self-overcoming. Socrates, however, seeks to tame existence, to mold it into something understandable and ordered. His relentless questioning is not a search for truth, but a manifestation of an underlying sickness, a resentment toward the primal forces that he could not control. Nietzsche's suspicion of Socrates is deeply tied to what he sees as a self-destructive impulse in philosophy. Socratic thought, by elevating reason above all else, denies the deeper instinctual wisdom that life itself provides. In doing so, it undermines the foundations of a vibrant culture, replacing the immediacy of action with endless deliberation. To Nietzsche, this marks the beginning of nihilism, a condition in which people no longer act from a place of affirmation, but become trapped in an endless cycle of questioning, doubting, and denying their own instincts. The Socratic method, with its insistence on rational discourse and logical precision, is not a path to enlightenment, but a symptom of a deeper existential crisis. It is the philosophy of a declining civilization, one that no longer has the strength to embrace life as it is, but instead retreats into abstraction and intellectualization. Thus, Nietzsche's critique of Socrates is not merely a rejection of his ideas, but a condemnation of what he represents, the weakening of life's natural forces, the replacement of power with argument, and the beginning of a worldview that values reason over instinct. In Socrates, Nietzsche sees the seeds of a moral inversion that will later be fully realized in Christianity and modern democratic values, a world in which the strong are shackled by the weak, in which natural hierarchies are overturned, and in which existence itself is reduced to an object of debate rather than an experience to be embraced. Nietzsche's critique of Socrates extends beyond the realm of pure rationalism. It strikes at the very core of morality itself. For Nietzsche, Socrates is not merely a thinker, but a symbol of a profound shift in ethical values, one that would shape the course of Western civilization for millennia. The Socratic method, with its emphasis on questioning and dialectics, does not merely seek knowledge, it seeks to undermine the natural hierarchy of instincts and impose an artificial moral order. Socrates, in Nietzsche's eyes, represents the birth of slave morality, a system in which weakness is disguised as virtue and strength is condemned as vice. Prior to Socrates, Greek morality was rooted in the aristocratic ethos of the Homeric age, where nobility was defined by power, courage, and self-affirmation. The great figures of Greek tragedy did not justify their actions through dialectical reasoning. They lived and died by an unspoken, instinctual code of honor. But with Socrates, morality takes a radical turn. The virtues he espouses, humility, temperance, self-restraint, are not the virtues of the strong but of those who lack power. For Nietzsche, this shift is not accidental. It is the deliberate work of a man who, unable to embody the heroic ideals of the past, seeks instead to redefine the very meaning of virtue in a way that benefits the weak and undermines the strong. This new moral framework grounded in reason rather than instinct, lays the foundation for what Nietzsche sees as the great deception of Western thought. By presenting moral principles as the product of rational inquiry, Socrates disguises their true origin: resentment. The powerless, unable to assert their will directly, create values that justify their own existence while condemning those who possess genuine strength. Socrates, with his relentless questioning, does not seek truth for its own sake. He seeks to disarm the noble, the instinctual, the life-affirming forces of existence by subjecting them to endless scrutiny. What was once accepted as natural and self-evident must now be justified through logic, and in doing so, it is weakened, tamed, made safe for the many at the expense of the few. Nietzsche's attack on Socrates, then, is not just an intellectual disagreement. It is a battle between two fundamentally opposed worldviews. On one side stands the tragic aristocratic vision of life, where suffering and greatness go hand in hand, where individuals create their own values through sheer force of will. On the other, the Socratic vision, a world where reason replaces instinct, where virtue is measured not by power but by restraint, and where the natural order is subverted by those who seek to justify their own impotence. In Nietzsche's view, Socrates is the turning point, the moment when Western thought abandons its vitalistic roots and embarks on a path toward decadence, a path that would eventually culminate in Christianity, democracy, and the modern obsession with equality at the expense of greatness. The consequences of Socrates' philosophical revolution extend far beyond the confines of ancient Athens. For Nietzsche, Socrates is not merely a historical figure, but the origin of a sickness that would spread through Western civilization, poisoning its deepest instincts and leading to centuries of decline. This sickness, born from the Socratic exaltation of reason, manifests itself in the form of nihilism, a worldview in which life is no longer affirmed, but subjected to endless questioning, doubt, and self-negation. In seeking absolute truth, Socrates unknowingly planted the seeds of a world in which all values would eventually be deconstructed, leaving humanity in a state of existential paralysis. At the heart of Nietzsche's critique is the idea that Socrates leads to the death of meaning. By insisting that virtue must be justified through reason, Socrates introduces a mode of thought that is inherently corrosive. Once people begin questioning the basis of moral values, they inevitably discover that these values are not absolute, but contingent, shaped by historical and cultural forces. The logical consequence of Socratic inquiry is that no value, no belief, no principle is beyond doubt. This intellectual skepticism, once unleashed, cannot be contained. It will consume everything in its path, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. Nietzsche traces this trajectory from Socrates to Christianity to modern secularism. The Socratic emphasis on reason gave birth to Christian morality, which replaced the instinctual nobility of the ancient world with a doctrine of self-denial, meekness, and submission. In turn, the Enlightenment, inheriting the Socratic spirit, sought to dismantle religious dogma through rational critique. But once reason was turned against faith, it did not stop there. It continued its work, eroding all foundations of belief, leaving behind a world where nothing is sacred, where truth itself becomes a question rather than a certainty. This is the ultimate irony of Socrates' legacy. In seeking knowledge, he unknowingly set humanity on a path toward absolute skepticism, where even knowledge itself dissolves into uncertainty. For Nietzsche, the task of philosophy is not to continue the Socratic tradition, but to overcome it. It is not enough to question values, one must create new ones. Instead of being trapped in the endless dialectic of reason, humanity must return to a more vital, instinctual mode of existence, one in which values are not justified by logic, but affirmed through sheer will. The alternative is to remain lost in the abyss of nihilism, forever questioning, never acting, forever searching for meaning yet unable to create it. Socrates, in Nietzsche's view, was the first step on this downward spiral. The challenge for the modern world is to break free from his grip, to reclaim the power of instinct, the affirmation of life, and the creation of new values that do not depend on rational justification, but on the force of the will to power.